Welcome back to Second Helping, the show of choice for fans and followers of the number one league in all of collegiate athletics, the Southeastern Conference. Travis Reier alongside my great friend and co-host Brent Beaird, and we've got a special guest to go along with Brent Beaird, it appears, on this Thursday. Our mascot, I guess you could say, of Second Helping, Brent, making an appearance here early on.
Yeah, this is Chino, named for, now you appreciate this knowing Shannon, my daughter, Trav. Chino is the nickname for Frappuccino.
Okay.
That she liked to call up her dad and said, Dad, by the way, when you're leaving the grocery store, can you go by Starbucks and pick me up whatever she was in the mood for?
Yeah, I'm waiting for Latte to make an appearance to go along with Chino here on the show. But hey, we've got a lot to get into, Brent.
Yes.
Plenty to talk about as it relates, of course, to the Southeastern Conference. But we also have week 0 upon us. We've got Florida State and Georgia Tech set to get together in Dublin, Ireland. And I guess we could count that almost as a retro SEC game because Georgia Tech, previously a member of the Southeastern Conference, and well, Florida State certainly would love to be.
Well, yes. Now I do think what we're going to have is Florida State being a member of the Big Ten, not too far. But Trev, can we also say Florida State's a member of the SEC with all the former Alabama players that are on there, like Malik Benson?
Yeah, Roydell Williams, I guess, listed atop that depth chart at the running back position. Georgia Tech has had its share of transfers from Alabama in recent years. Brent Key, head coach, not too long ago, the offensive line coach in Tuscaloosa for Nick Saban. So some parallels that you can draw to the Crimson Tide and the SEC, no doubt about that. Now, Brent, as it relates to the Southeastern Conference, we were introduced to the tiebreaker scenarios that will be in play in terms of determining the two participants in the 2024 SEC championship game and beyond, because we don't have divisions to figure that out for us anymore. Boy, I got about 2 or 3 scenarios into that thing and really sort of glazed over. I don't know. Maybe you can simplify what we were given here by the league office in the last couple of days.
Well, I think basically it's either head-to-head, which is number one, or then it's do you have a better record than your opponent in the other games? The concerning thing, Trav, is that if they get down to like number 8, where it's a blind draw, that'd be a problem if they got to that. So
War and Peace was shorter, I think.
It really was, wasn't it?
These scenarios for the tiebreaker for the SEC championship game. But I'm sort of taking the approach, I'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yes, please.
Brent, we've got so much football to play and so much to be determined here in the next couple of 3 months. So, it's going to be a lot. There's no doubt about it. What we do know for sure, Brent, are some TV assignments as it relates to week 1 in the Southeastern Conference. Varsity crews across the league, because you've got matchups like Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and College Station. You've got LSU, SC on a Sunday night, Labor Day weekend in Vegas. You've got Florida and Miami there in Gainesville on Saturday afternoon, August the 31st. So it's starting to feel more and more real when we start getting these announcing crews assigned to these specific games, including Georgia Clemson, with my personal favorite, my opinion, the best to do it in a long time, Sean McDonough, going to handle play-by-play for ABC for Georgia Clemson in Atlanta. Greg McElroy, the former Alabama quarterback, going to handle the analyst duties. Molly McGrath working the sidelines. So here we go, Brent. We've got our TV assignments now.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm not sure there's I think Sean McDonough could make a marbles match interesting, frankly, and how versatile that he is. One thing that certainly catches my attention too would be Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit, Holly Rowe for the Notre Dame A&M game, which game day will be there, by the way, is interesting. And then Trail, by the way, On the next day, you've got Kurt Herbstreit and Reese Davis from ESPN who'll be doing the LSU Southern Cal game in Las Vegas. But Trev, I'm just guessing the ESPN crew probably won't be going commercial, and they won't be in that security line very long, will they?
No, that'll be Kirk on a G5 with his pup. He travels with his dog now, so kind of like you and Chino. When I think of Kirk Herbstreit and his lab, I think Brent, Beaird, and Chino.
That's right.
It's kind of the way we are in college football these days. So, no, there will not be any commercial flights for Kirk. It is a quick turnaround. ESPN, it seems like there's only like 8 total talents that work for that network now.
Yeah.
Laura Rutledge, I think she's great, by the way. It's amazing how far they're pulling her now in different directions, whether it's college football, the NFL. So it'll be a busy weekend for Kirk Herbstreit, but he has a couple of the biggest games. I'm really interested in LSU USC on Sunday night. I think that has the potential to be explosive in the way of points. We understand who SC starting quarterback is going to be. That's going to be Miller Moss. That's no surprise. No. He's been the guy throughout the offseason, into the preseason. Really good wide receiver core. I think sort of a prove-it group on both ways, although Zach Branch is a legit superstar, in my opinion, already for SC. Yeah. But I think for LSU, it's a proving ground game for Kyron Lacey and some of the other guys that we're going to talk about with LSU coming up a little bit later in the program. But let's get into our half the league in a half hour. That's what I'm going to start calling this.
I love that. Segment. That's great.
Half the league in a half hour, Brent. And who we're going to start with this week are the Tennessee Volunteers. And I guess it was interesting that in the last scrimmage of the preseason, we did not see the Vols starting quarterback, but that did give Josh Heupel more of an opportunity, although he has experience at that backup spot in terms of program experience anyway in Gaston Moore, to get that guy more work and also look at some different things for an offensive line that's been banged up, it sounds like, a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, offensively, I think they could be very good, but it certainly gave Gaston Moore some experience. Now he is a veteran, so he understands it, but you never know when Nico may go out, the starting quarterback, obviously, and surrounded by guys like Squirrel White, who and Brew McCoy, the Southern Cal transfer who had surgery. He's getting some work, and he's doing well, and should be ready to play. Look, Trav, to me, maybe, and you certainly hear this from Tennessee beat writers, maybe the MVP is not Nico. To me, the MVP is Cooper Mays at center, because all the beat writers, and I heard him this week talk about when Mays went out or he was not able to play, Trav, that was a different offense. So his presence is crucial for them.
Yeah, it's not just a physical thing with Cooper Mays. It's a glue of situation in terms of holding the rest of that front together. And also with an experienced guy like that, your young quarterback, your new starting quarterback, doesn't have to worry as much about line checks and making calls and protections, because that's where a Cooper Mays has a lot of value as well, kind of frees Nico up to do his thing. We look at the start of the schedule for the Tennessee Vols. It's going to be Chattanooga a week from Saturday in Knoxville. I've kind of looked at the Vols start as really not happening until Oklahoma and Norman there on September 21st. But you got to watch out for NC State on that second Saturday in Charlotte. Should be a great environment. NC State football right now trending in a very positive direction, has been for quite some time. So the Duke's Mayo Classic, Brent, with the Pack and the Vols on September 7th.
And look, we talked a lot about offense. I still think, and I was at the Alabama-Tennessee game last year. To me, can they be as effective in the front seven? I mean, they led the SEC in tackles for loss, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. Also, and I mean, we've mentioned Mays in a lot of these guys too. But I can tell you the reality for them, I still think, Trav, is how Pierce and that defense goes would determine their season.
Yeah, and they feel like they're capable. They feel like they are upper echelon SEC up front on defense with Amari Thomas and Pierce and the rest of those guys. Not just those two guys either. We talked about it before. I think the back end is where we're going to need to see a little bit more
Yes.
from Tennessee.
Yes.
But up front, that front seven feel pretty good about this Tennessee football team. Hey, let's talk about LSU, the aforementioned LSU Tigers, as we move along here, Brent. It's been, I think, in some ways, the sort of preseason that LSU needed to have with this new defensive staff and with an
Yes.
emphasis on that defensive front, because it sounds like Savion Jones, Jacoby and Guillory, veterans that are desperately needed for a front that is still going to be under fire and questioned throughout this 2024 season, even with Bo Davis back in Baton Rouge and handling those defensive line coach duties. But as is the case with a lot of places around the league, optimism right now that that defense can certainly improve over what we saw a year ago.
Yeah, and they've had guys like Greg Penn who have stepped up at linebacker, and there's some names here that what we've mentioned several times. Sage Ryan, also Kylan Jackson, Major Burns is certainly a name in the secondary that we've talked about a lot. That's going to determine their season. There's no question. And Trav, this is a stat that really takes me aback. Frankly, they have not won an opener. Now, we consider who they play, particularly like Florida State, have not won an opener since 2019. So boy, how much emphasis will be on this Southern Cal game?
Yeah, and I do appreciate, as you alluded to there, LSU will line it up with some legit teams to kick
Yes.
off seasons, back-to-backs with Florida State. Now here comes SC. You're going out west. Should be a strong Trojan fan base presence. You know LSU fans are going to travel en masse
Yeah, really.
out to Vegas. But we talked about this a little bit earlier. I really feel like for both these teams, we won't get too in-depth because we'll talk about this more next week. Which defensive line can give anything to either of
Absolutely.
these teams? And I think it's very interesting to note LSU and SC wrote big checks for defensive line coaches.
Yeah.
Bo
Oh, yeah.
Davis with LSU, Eric Henderson coming in from the Los Angeles Rams for Southern California. So that tells you the type of help that was needed at one of the most critical areas of a football team, and new starting quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah.
Garrett Nussmeier, Miller Moss, going to be fun to watch. And as you look at LSU move through the month of September after that top 25 matchup with USC, Nichols in Baton Rouge for the home opener, that's very doable. Interesting game at South Carolina
It will be.
on September the 14th. What will Shane Beamer have for the Tigers at Williams-Brice Stadium? That should still be at that point an energized fan base. I think it's going to be a lot tougher to go to South Carolina in mid-September than, say, even mid-October. UCLA comes to Baton Rouge. It's a very interesting start with a couple of the LA programs dotting that schedule for the Tigers. As we move along here, Brent, let's talk about the Florida Gators and kind of what the feeling is down there in Gainesville these days for Billy Napier and what we all know is a critical fork in the road type of season for Billy Napier. I don't like hearing about injuries this time of year. Tell us about the running back situation. Start there because I think that's where most people's attention is right now, given the situation and the uncertainty at the top of the depth chart at that spot.
They really think that Montreal Johnson will be back. But again, the thing we've talked about here is, Trav, it's one thing to run straight ahead when you're on the treadmill, but when you're talking about cutting, I just wondered if he's almost going to be on a pitch count. Frankly, now they've got some other guys. Jayden Baugh is someone that they think they can be able to count on. And they've had some other guys recently to step up. Rod Kearney, who I actually watched when he was in Orange Park High School, Trav, on the offensive line is beginning to step up. Pup Howard, speaking of South Carolina, coming from there. Pup Howard being another Jacksonville kid that they really like. But I've got a stat here, and I give Scott Carter credit for this. That you being one of the best analysts I've ever known, you'll pick up on this real quick. Florida has not had a linebacker lead them in tackles since Ventrell Miller in 2020. It's the last few years, Travis, it's been all safeties at this point. So, boy, oh boy, and the biggest need, I think, for this team is on that side of the ball. What does that tell you where they've been over the last few years?
Yeah, and if that doesn't change this year, because I love Pup Howard coming in
Yes.
from South Carolina, I think he has, when you look and think about the Brandon Spikes types and the Ventrell Millers and the guys that have played
Yes.
inside linebacker at the University of Florida in the past, let alone Shamar James, to
Really?
go along with Pup Howard, I think that linebacker stat could change or should change this season. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is at this point for the Florida Gators. We know that opener with Miami, critical to both teams, sitting there on August the 31st. Then you catch a little bit of a break the next week against Samford. And then you could get into desperation mode real quick.
Yeah.
Not that Florida starts the season without stress, and certainly when you think of Billy Napier in that regard. But Texas A&M in Gainesville on September the 14th, because A&M could be coming off a loss to start the season with Notre Dame. So it gets really fast for teams in this league. And when I think about Florida and I think about defense, absolutely, those linebackers need to step up. But also some of that goes back to the defensive line.
Sure,
because there just haven't been enough war daddy types for the Gators in the last 3 or 4 years. If you got guys that have to be doubled up front, that frees your linebackers up a lot more to make tackles. Instead, your linebackers end up catching blocks, and then it's your secondary, your safeties, your sub-package defenders that end up making way too many stops. Brent, let's keep it moving here, and let's talk about those Ole Miss Rebels. Boy, the hype train continues to grow. And you know how I know that? Because when Chris Lowe of ESPN shows up in the preseason to go in depth with a program.
Good point.
Kind of tells you what the expectations are for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels in 2024.
Yeah, Lane had a good time to talk about the Coke bottle this week.
Did a good Nick Saban with that one, I thought.
Yeah, really did.
Yeah.
Talked about 60-something grams of sugar in that cup. Trav, I'm sure the Coca-Cola advertising people really appreciated that.
Well, if I'm Coke in that situation, my response is, hey, consider the source. You're really going to listen to this guy talk about what you should or shouldn't consume?
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. We're talking about Lane Kiffin here.
Absolutely. Right? Oh, I agree with that totally. Listen, one thing, though, is I mean, a lot of people think it's teed up for Ole Miss with this schedule, but being particularly easily going through in September. I mean, the offense is just unbelievable. Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, Ulysses Bentley. I mean, we can go on for a while. I'm still concerned about the line of scrimmage, even though they've got these transfers in. Diego Pounds, also Nate Calipo.
Did I read that right? Could have 4 transfer starters.
Yeah.
I think people think Ole Miss and they think the transfer situation is almost exclusive to the defense. No, it's literally at every area of this football team. Now, you could point at quarterback and say Jackson Dart, but hey, Jackson Dart was a transfer a few years back. It is transfer portal tech right now. But the roster is solid, no doubt.
It is. But again, can they? And again, Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, South Carolina. Man, oh man! And it's going to be mid-October. They go to Baton Rouge, which will tell of it. But still. And Trav, you obviously covered Pete Golding. He's been with this defense for a bit now, I'm being old school here, but I still don't believe this team can be a playoff team until that defense is much improved.
Yeah, and again, you think about the additions, especially up front and in the secondary with Trey Amos coming in from the University of Alabama.
Right.
We've talked about him in the past as really one of the sort of, in my opinion, undervalued transfer portal additions across the Southeastern Conference because, boy, when I think about Ole Miss in the past, I think of defensive backfields getting just lit up. Now, you could point to the front and some of that for certainly having something to do with that. But you're right about the schedule. I think Missouri, we're going to talk about a little bit later in your notebook. Missouri and Ole Miss are kind of first cousins, I look at this season, if not exactly brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in week 3 for Ole Miss when the Rebels travel to Wake Forest. That's an intriguing matchup. Not so much because I can see Ole Miss losing the game, but if Ole Miss is legitimately of the quality that we're being told it is, it won't just win at Wake Forest.
Yeah.
It'll win and be in command pretty much throughout that game. And that's not to knock a Wake Forest program that, again, the only reason why I think that game's intriguing is because if you sleep on Wake, you could certainly pay the price for it.
Sure could.
If you're Ole Miss. Brent, let's talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide up next year on Second Helping. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, Reier on YouTube, we would certainly appreciate you going ahead and doing that right now. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. If you wouldn't mind, give us a thumbs up, a like for the program. That would help us out tremendously as well. So let's talk Crimson Tide. Ready to crank it up in year 1 under head coach Kalen DeBoer. And speaking of rapidly ascending additions to this program, what about Courtney Morgan?
Man,
Alabama's general manager now going to go to $825 per year on a new 3-year deal for general manager Courtney Morgan. Really points to where we're headed, I think, in college football. I think there have already been general manager types, but they have been largely behind the scenes. Courtney has been more out in front. I think Courtney also, from a networking perspective, has tremendous value, whether it's on the high school level, whether it's on the transfer portal level. This is a direction we're going. I've said it before. I hope, as sort of a residual of this, some of these support staffers that work 20 hours a day for 45, 50K a year get some of that love from a financial perspective, because quality of life right now, if you're a support staffer, especially, we kind of talk about it from the assistant coach, head coach level. At least those guys are making north of 500K a year.
Yeah, right.
Into the millions, as we know. These support staffers, it's rough. But let's talk about Jaden Roberts a little bit. The big offensive guard dealing with an injury, had a procedure performed here. Sounds like it's a hand injury, Brent. And I think this is a spot where we talk about the transfer portal so much as it relates to plug and play starters. And essentially that's what it is, because guys aren't looking to transfer to be the third guard. But boy, Alabama adding Gino Vandermark from Michigan State, seasoned vet, 4th-year player, I believe. And now with Jaden Roberts out, he's expected back, by the way. That's what Kalen DeBoer is saying as far as the opener with Western Kentucky, is that Jaden Roberts will be ready to go. But if he isn't, at least you know you got a guy like Vandermark that's played a lot of football.
Absolutely. And this offensive line is really taking shape. I think they're happy with it. When we've talked about Wilkin Formby a little bit, who is getting folks' attention, Eli Pritchett also competing there. And Eli Pritchett is, look, the best thing for Pritchett is there have been no early morning phone calls to the coaching staff for whatever reason, right?
Yeah, I had a couple bumps in the road, Elijah Pritchett, but in competition, does sound like Wilkin Formby has become pretty close to a fixture at right tackle. I've said it before about Wilkin Formby. What you like about him, he's just a guy that puts in the work and gets better.
That's right.
Every year. And I think when you think dependability, you would think more along the lines of maybe a guy that's been in the program for a year or two longer. But I actually think in this particular instance, it's Wilkin that you can think about in terms of that steady presence
Yes.
on a down in and down out basis. Doesn't mean he's going to be perfect. Means that he's going to take his lumps and learn and apply it pretty quickly. And you're going to see the corrections made, the adjustments made. I think that's going to end up being a big, big thing in his place, perhaps in this starting five. But it is an offensive line that with Caden Proctor at left tackle, with that interior trio, especially when Jaden Roberts is 100% and good to go. We talk so much about Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan, and how this offense is going to be explosive, and I certainly expect that to be the case. But with Justice Haynes, also sounds like Jam Miller is back.
Yes.
He had been banged up a little bit, so that running back rotation had taken a little bit of a hit, but seems to be rounding into form. This run game could really help this team across the board in being able to control games once Alabama gets into a favorable spot, because the back end of that defense is still going to be a bit of a question mark until we see it actually perform at a high level.
Yeah. And real quick, one thing that helps that offensive line, I think this defensive front gives them some real competition. We talked about LT Overton last week and the improvement he's made. Jaheim Otis, Tim Keenan, Quay Robinson, Trav. It's going to be huge, frankly, as you mentioned, for this secondary. If that front seven of this defense is able to do what we think it is, and we've heard Keon Keeley mentioned a good bit this week too, guys like that. But that front seven it could really help, and I think it also helps before you go to Wisconsin. That you've also got Middle Tennessee and South Florida to get this group ready to go.
Yeah, Western Carolina in the opener,
yeah, thank you.
And then South Florida. I would love to be privy to every day watching the interior defensive lineman for Alabama go against the interior trio. Boy, to see Tim Keenan, to see Tim Smith, to see those guys, Jaheim Otis, the rest of those big guys, working against Tyler Booker, Jaden Roberts, Parker Brailsford. That is some high level interior offensive line and defensive line play. Your hope, if you're an Alabama fan, is that it really is an iron sharpening iron situation at the edge positions and with those offensive tackles and maybe even some of the tight ends, because Chris Braswell is in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Bucks now. Dallas Turner is in the National Football League, as we know now, with the Minnesota Vikings. So you really do hope that Q Robinson, Quay Rusal, also Keanu Coote, and you mentioned Keon Keeley as a young guy who's transitioning more at that bandit position. You really do hope that they are helping to sharpen the skills of guys like Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett and Wilkin Formby. Now, when we talk about the schedule, as you said, seems to be pointing towards week 3 and that trip to Madison, Wisconsin. I think Western Kentucky, though, is an opener. Last 10, 15, 20 years, Western Kentucky can throw it around a lot and can challenge you in some areas where I'm more concerned about Alabama big picture defensively than I am, say, maybe the areas where Wisconsin really would like to get it done between the numbers, between the hash marks. But I'm sure Wisconsin, looking at this perimeter defense for Alabama, will have some things in store for the outside as well. Hey, Brent, let's get into your notebook here on Second Helping. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Gamecocks of South Carolina. As we know, absolutely huge year for, of course, Shane Beamer. And tell us what you're hearing about that quarterback position. I don't think it's all that big of a surprise, but it sounds like it's been formally announced anyway.
Yeah, it has been. Lenore Sellers is the guy. They really like him. He's a dual threat guy. Travis and I really love Spencer Rattler, and we both think that he's going to do better in the NFL than people give him credit for. But Sellers, Robbie Ashford is behind him, Davis Bevel. Luke Doty is a guy that's kind of a multi-purpose, that you can use him at a whole lot of different positions along that line. Trav, I'm still just not sold on this team. I'm hoping they do well. I'm with you. And as you said a few weeks ago, Shane Beamer is a good fit for them. But boy, they just don't need to go backwards and end up with a 5-7 type thing, struggling with quarterback all the whole season.
No, they don't. And I think in terms of personality traits and energy, Shane Beamer is exactly what you need at a place like South Carolina.
Yeah.
I think same thing for Sam Pittman at Arkansas.
Yep. Yep.
I think there are a
Agreed.
lot of parallels to be drawn from South Carolina and Arkansas in terms of the challenges that they have. Commitment is there. I mean, the fan bases,
Mm-hmm.
the resources to win, they're all there, but recruiting isn't exactly easy at either
So,
place. So it's going to take that kind of guy, but ultimately you still have to win football games. It's kind of like Josh Heupel. I don't see Josh Heupel as a juice guy, high energy guy,
yeah. Right.
but he is hella smart when it comes to running an offense.
He is.
And so you can do it that way as well, as we're seeing at Tennessee with Josh Heupel. But we look at this schedule for South Carolina and ODU in the opener on August the 31st, and then fork in the road game,
Yes.
crossroads game, kind of combined them there. South Carolina at Kentucky. We're
No
going to learn
doubt.
about both teams in week 2
Yes.
up in Lexington.
Oh yeah, yeah. Look, that's going to be crucial for both these teams. We talked about Pup Howard at Florida a minute ago. Boy, he's the type of guy that that South Carolina really needed in a lot of ways. You mentioned Sean Elliott a few times, and I agree with that. Sean, look, we're not necessarily saying he was brought in to be the replacement for Beamer if that doesn't work. But you've got to have a lot of confidence in your staff. I think they certainly do in Elliott. So a good start really is something that would be much welcome at South Carolina.
And Elliott hasn't come in as the offensive coordinator, but it sounds like even as the tight ends coach, there could be his imprint on this offense in terms of style, because I know you've noted in your notebook, South Carolina, pretty much a pro style, which makes sense under Spencer Rattler, especially and with the last couple of coordinators that Shane Beamer has had in Cola. But this could be more maybe RPO zone read, especially when you consider Norris at the quarterback situation, Rocket Sanders coming in from Arkansas. That would make sense beyond Sean Elliott coming in, I guess.
No question.
All right, let's talk the Missouri Tigers. You talk about expectations, man. Eli Drinkwitz coming off an 11-win season with the Tigers, the Cotton Bowl champs, Missouri Tigers. And so we look at this team, and I think we've both talked about it in the past. Defensively is where you're probably going to have the most questions. I don't think there's any doubt about that, because you're encouraged by the offensive returnees. But it's not just a turnover in staff with the coordinator change. It's also a lot of production for Missouri out the door on the defensive side.
Oh, yeah. And Corey Batoon, who is a new coordinator, I think there's a lot of pressure that's on him. Frankly, I mean, they're coming off double-digit wins. There are people looking at Missouri as a playoff possibility, and that early schedule may allow that to be able to happen. But last year, and look, this went way under the radar. Missouri defensively third in the SEC in havoc numbers, tied with Alabama for takeaways at 19. I mean, they've certainly got some talent. Darius Robinson's a good pass rusher. Tyrone Hopper, Jalen Carlisle's. There are guys here who can get it done. And look, I'm sure it caught your eagle eye that that Drink fired up that fan base, didn't he, this week, Trav? It basically challenged him about that. They've got a very easy early schedule, but he wants their rear ends in the seats coming in September.
Yeah, that's the other side of kind of that soft opening to the season for Missouri. Is the fan base going to maintain that fervor that Missouri ended the season with? Because Murray State on a Thursday night to open the season, that's not going to get the pulse moving.
No.
Buffalo the following Saturday, Boston College on September the 14th.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt on September the 21st. I mean, Missouri has the feeling of a team that it's like, okay, we'll check back in on October the 5th when you go to Texas A&M and kind of get an update, because this you talk about a soft opening. This is it. And I think you're on it about Corey Batoon. It's interesting because he comes in from South Alabama. Kane Womack was the head coach at South Alabama. So Kane Womack leaves South Alabama to coordinate an SEC defense at Alabama, and Corey Batoon stepping into the frying pan at Missouri, where expectations, as we said, aren't going away anytime soon. Let's wrap things up in the notebook, Brent, with some Arkansas talk. We're going to call the Hogs as we wind down the latest episode of Second Helping.
I think Taylon Green is growing on Arkansas fans, especially when you throw a 65-yard touchdown to Jordan Anthony in the scrimmage. Also, Luke Hatz had a 30 and a 15-yard catch. They think they're improving at wide receiver. I think that's going to be important. Braylon Russell at running back, 30-yard run, 25-yard run, and a 7-yard touchdown. So that they are improving there a little bit. Defense doing better. Also, and we know what Bobby Petrino can do with them. Look, I'm not saying that this is going to be even a bowl team. I hope they will, because I'm with you. I like Pittman. I think he's a really good fit there. But can they get back, Trav, to 6-6 and 7-5 and causing some problems? And I'm just wondering, KJ Jefferson is gone. They couldn't really protect him. He was probably too big last year. So Taylon Green is an interesting transfer who comes in and has done pretty well so far.
Yeah, at this point, if you're an Arkansas fan, as crazy as this sounds, in Bobby Petrino we trust. That's what you've got right now.
Yeah.
You've got to trust that the quarterback whisperer that has been Bobby Petrino in the past can work the magic with the Boise transfer in Taylon Green. The last scrimmage sounded like, anyway, the best scrimmage, because
sure did.
Based on your notes, 8 interceptions for the Arkansas defense, but then also several explosive plays for the offense, several touchdowns. I think Luke Haas that you mentioned is really critical to this offense from that mismatch scenario that he can give that offense from his spot. And Petrino, if you look at his resume with tight ends, it's pretty good. He knows how to get those guys involved. He does different things that feature tight ends, but even quarterback depth looked like it was maybe a bit of a positive. Not just Taylon Green as the starter, but you also have KJ Jackson, I guess, is a young quarterback. Malachi Singleton apparently did some good things in that scrimmage, but a little bit of everything in that last scrimmage. And also, we talk about schedules, right? As we look at Arkansas here, it is a Thursday nighter in Little Rock, War Memorial Stadium for the Razorbacks and Arkansas Pine Bluff. And then, as we know, big game in Stillwater on September the 7th. That's an early kickoff on ABC. You look at UAB back in Fayetteville. This schedule, though, when I really look at it, the games that you would want in Fayetteville are in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you had to pick, Texas in Fayetteville, Ole Miss in Fayetteville, LSU in Fayetteville, Tennessee, Fayetteville. That's
great schedule.
There's a lot of value in that Arkansas season ticket this year.
Oh yeah. Hey, the Trev, and we probably don't talk about that much. Will the ticket man in Fayetteville be happy this year?
He could be. He needs some help from this football team early on, or boy, there's going to be a lot of burnt orange. There's going to be a lot of purple and gold potentially. So need Arkansas to get through this first 4 games. If Arkansas can just even get through these first 4 games in 3-1, any combination of 3 wins and 1 loss heading into Arlington in late September for that traditional matchup with Texas A&M, that would be certainly an encouraging start for a team that seems to be very much in question where Sam Pittman is concerned. Well, Brent, always great stuff there from your notebook. That is half the league. in a half hour. Well, we were close anyway, Brent.
That's right.
The effort was good. We get an A for effort. Brent, anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah. One thing I did want to mention too is Todd Rodemaker. It looks like he's going to be the quarterback now at Southern Miss, and we can tie that together with the SEC as they're going to be playing Kentucky, which I just thought was interesting. He's got a little bit of experience. Not saying he's going to set the world on fire, but Trev, if people want a fun exercise, sit down with a college football preseason magazine and look and see where all the quarterbacks have transferred back and forth.
Yeah, it's crazy. Tate Rodemaker, I think, obviously an upgrade for USM, but Kentucky, high hopes for their transfer quarterback as well. And Brock Vandegrift, boy,
Yes.
that buzz out of Lexington has really been growing lately. 9-3, making the college football playoff, maybe as a 12 seed. I love it. Big Blues feeling it on the football front as we look ahead to the rapidly approaching start of the 2024 regular season. Well, Brent, as always, appreciate all the great insight. I look forward to doing it again very, very soon. It will be preview time for week 1 of the Southeastern Conference. Really looking forward to it, my friend.
And Trev, I want to encourage folks to check out your YouTube. That is really going well. And next week, we need to see, is Pops any more confident in his Florida Gators a few days before kickoff?
We may have to pipe in Pops. Maybe we can get a try box on here. I've tried to set him up with some technology.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's taking.
I'm sure,
but I'm gonna work on that.
Good.
Work on that next week, maybe.
Excellent.
All right, Brent.
Enjoyed it, brother. Take care.
As Brent said, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Reier on YouTube channel. Just hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. That way you get all of our shows as they drop right here on Reier on YouTube. Hit us with a like if you don't mind. That would help us out as well. Until next time, so long, everybody.